It was always inevitable that some bitterness would flow in the aftermath of the Victorian bushfires, and undoubtedly one of the most contentious issues for the Royal Commission post-mortem will be whether the protection of native vegetation went too far. Many residents of the fire areas and some past and present firefighters blame a build-up of fuel in the bush in the midst of a prolonged drought for the heightened intensity of the fires. Heather Hewitt reports from Melbourne.
In the ruins of what was Lou Ackerman's home for almost 50 years, he finds a minor miracle. His veggie patch has survived.
That's tomorrow night's tea.
As this farmer on the Buxton Road to Marysville salvages what veggies he can barely contain his frustration at the loss of one house after another along his roadside. Like many locals here, he accuses the state government and his Shire Council of fuelling the fire by failing to clear fallen native trees and branches.
I'm watching the fire go down the verge of the road, burn merrily there at the bridge, and then up the hill like a rocket, and away goes Brown's house. Now that rubbish on the side of the road is just a death trap.
Do you blame the trees along the road here for the loss of some houses near us?
Yes, because of the radiant heat and the fuel build-up that we aren't permitted by law to do anything about.
How we are not allowed to sue the government, whoever owns the road or takes our registration for the road, I don't know, but we should be able to, because they have done no work in preparation for fire. They have done no cleaning up. What's going on? What's happening?
Rightly or wrongly, the blame game has begun, and there's no doubt in the minds of these neighbours about what must happen next.
It's not politically correct, but trees do not have a place alongside public highways at all.
We must get some sense into the show, and I don't know what government's got the guts to do it, but it must be done. People died because they could not get through with all this debris falling.
It's an argument the federal member for McEwen, Fran Bailey, says she hears over and over as she tours areas destroyed by fire throughout her electorate. On this day, she's at Steeles Creek, where several residents died.
This is a typical road where anything that falls down, if a tree falls over, if branches fall, they're simply left lying on the ground. Over the years, we get this tremendous build-up of fuel, which is just sitting there waiting to be burnt. You get a fire come along like the one we had on Saturday, and this actually causes an obstruction to people being able to evacuate themselves out of the area.
Fran Bailey has sympathy for the push to remove large native trees from the roadside, but leading authorities on bushfires question the wisdom of this approach.
I think roadsides sometimes actually provide a pretty good windbreak and actually can slow fires down. We need to be managing those roadsides, but the concentration on woody material in the roadsides is probably a little bit of a furphy, but we should be maintaining and managing those. And one of the things we need to be doing is keeping weeds out of them, because often weeds are the more flammable than the native vegetation that we have.
I think the scientists should talk to the people who have to fight fires like we had on Saturday in areas like this.
The trees seem to be valued more than people. The lessons of intense fire in Victoria are on the board. From Black Thursday 1851 right through to 1983, how many more times do we have to subject people that live in forest areas to these intense fires which will occur because of somebody's hobby horse and their reluctance to see trees cut down?
These issues will no doubt be argued passionately before the Royal Commission, but central to the debate is general confusion over who has responsibility for roads in country areas, the state government authority, Vic Roads, or local councils.
Local residents, all they want to know is who has the responsibility, who do they contact when they see that there's a potential problem.
We're stuck in an impossible position.
We're not allowed even to go down with a chainsaw and cut the wood off the side of the road. We'll get fined.
The State Minister for the Environment was unavailable for an interview to respond to these complaints, But a government spokesman said a new exemption to native vegetation regulations was introduced last September to enable authorities to clear fallen trees and limbs from roadsides without a planning permit. But the locals on this road to Marysville reckon there's no evidence of it taking effect here. Neighbouring shires hit by fire say the exemption was also news to them.
I know that under our planning policy we have to apply for permits in order to prune limbs and even cut down dead trees in certain circumstances on public roads. So, no, I hadn't heard of that.
Local councils are copping it on all fronts and are under intense pressure to review their planning policies.
I've had experience where councils will basically say, yes, you can build your house here, you need to actually clear the fire hazard around the place, but you're not allowed to remove any native vegetation in doing that. Now, to me, that's a fairly blinkered approach.
We are definitely going to be reviewing council's policies, and I personally don't believe that there is going to be a single silver bullet solution.
And the state government is under pressure to step up controlled burning of forests, national parks and public land to reduce fuels. Last year, a parliamentary inquiry recommended it be doubled to 5%. That's 370,000 hectares a year.
The amount of burning that we've been doing in the past I don't think has been adequate.
It is a complex issue. There's hundreds of different vegetation types in Victoria, and each of those respond differently to fire. And if you overburn, you can create greater problems in the future.
The mainstream environmental groups say they're not opposed to fuel reduction burning as long as it's scientifically controlled. But some scientists worry that the bureaucrats in charge lack the expertise and that more prescribed burning of public land could be seen as the only answer.
It's the severity of the weather conditions, not just the fuels. I'm a great advocate for prescribed burning, but it's not a panacea for fire protection.
The great fear is that the findings of the Royal Commission, like so many inquiries before it, will not be acted upon.
I'm sure when we look at this year's events again, we'll come up with many of the same recommendations that probably Judge Stretton came up with after the 1939 fires.
The people of Victoria have been let down. And I think the government's got a great opportunity now to redress that.
The public's expectations are very high.
Yeah, the Ewart reporting on a debate that also has echoes of sentiment expressed after the Canberra bushfires and 6 years ago. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow night we'll be showing some discussions with Canberra residents and the road they've had to follow since they survived those follows, and perhaps some messages for Victorians.